Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order at exactly 1 o'clock. I'm going to say good morning to our, actually I guess it's afternoon, to our council and staff. Nice to see you here, and hopefully the weather stays like this until we get home tonight. And thank you for the people who are listening up above. We're going to be there to help us. Proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. Could we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Clarkson, are you present?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Ron Windover is absent. Councillor Armstrong?
Present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Lamshead?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
I don't believe we have Steve or Ivan, but please let me know if you're on the line. Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities. Dylan, are you there? John Izinga, Chief Building Official.
Is it?
Allison Martin, Planning Administrator.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Temporary Manager of Building and Planning.
Present.
Anne Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Chastity Robertson, Deputy Treasurer.
Present.
Chelsea Carpenter, Waste Management Public Works Coordinator. Chelsea, are you present?
Present.
Chris Jones, Planning Consultant.
Present.
Did we ever get Dylan?
I am here now, present.
Thank you. And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services, Clerk is present.
Thank you, Jesse. Now, if we could have a moment of reflection, and if anybody has anybody special you'd like to remember, by all means, let's know who it is. Thank you. Now, Sarah McCauley has left us, and Sarah came to Trent Lakes as a OP student from Seneca College, and although her initial contract was for 6 months, we've been fortunate enough to have had her stay with us for the past 6 years. I know we all wish her nothing but success in her new role. Sarah, good luck to you. Now, Allison Martin is new to this role, and we welcome her. Allison Martin has joined Trent Lakes as a planning administrator, and Allison has worked with the city of Port Colborne and will be relocating here from the Niagara region. We're excited that Allison will be joining our team, and welcome to Trent Lakes. Thank you, Allison, and we can't wait to meet you. Now, we're going to have a disclosure of pecuniary interest, and I will remind council members of their obligation to declare any pecuniary interest they may have now or at any time in the future. And we need a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Armstrong and seconded, Councillor Lamshead. All in favor? That motion has carried. We need motions for the regular council meetings of February the 16th, statutory meeting for February the 16th, and special council meeting for February the 16th. A motion for the minutes of all three, please. Councillor Franzen and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? That motion has carried. Minutes and reports from committees and boards. Economic Development Advisory Committee, February the 8th. Do we want a motion for all of these at the same time? Library Board from November the 13th. And Parks and Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, February the 11th. One motion, please. Yes.
Motion and a couple questions on economic development.
Yep.
One of them is about The properties first, a lot of businesses for sale in Buckhorn, and there was a question whether for the acquisition of a property or an acquisition policy. I think Christine Berkman made that comment. I don't know if that was just a comment or if that was a discussion that was had at the board. It was in the minutes.
Okay, do you want to just phrase that again, Peter?
It was about a policy on acquisition of properties.
Okay. Now, we certainly, economic development is not in a position to be able to make that motion. Donna, have you comment on that?
So through you, I believe, if I recall, there was a question as to whether we had an acquisition policy, but I don't exactly remember if there was any request in that regard. So,
Do you have another one, Peter?
But the question, like the statement in the minutes was that there were lots of businesses for sale in Buckhorn. And my comment is, what does that have to do with the municipality, whether there's lots of businesses for sale in Buckhorn? So what's expectations from the municipality or from the economic development committee?
Well, I guess, Peter, if I were going to speak to an economic development, and Carol, you can add to this at any time, but if you have an economic development committee and this area is mainly tourism, which includes your downtown area of Buckhorn, economic development doesn't have the power to redevelop those areas, but they certainly have the ability to make sure that if somebody comes forward, that we can help them to kind of understand what the process is. You can't take economic development and the amount of businesses that are in jeopardy in Buckhorn and not marry them together. How that marries out in the long run, I'm not sure, but you can't ignore that fact in my view.
Okay.
Carol, do you want to add something to that?
I think only that, the committee in general was looking for guidance on what can and cannot be considered for purchase by the municipality. Because we don't really have an asset acquisition policy as it relates to land. So I don't think it went any further than that.
No, and specifically, it wasn't having to do with purchasing any of that. It was trying to, through an economic development footprint, to be business friendly, because that's one of the things that businesses need is to have a business friendly. That's why we're looking at setting up an ambassador program.
Okay.
So that if people come to us and they ask us questions, we can point them in the right direction. We can't influence decisions made, but economic development has an opportunity to put out an olive branch. Rhonda Keenan, who is the head of the Peterborough Economic Development, she has agreed to come and do a presentation to council, and I have to talk to Donna and Jesse about what the date would be for that. And so she's going to come and talk about the economic development, where the scope of that falls. And also at the same time, we will bring economic development in for that discussion, because it'll give all of us a better idea as to what the scope of economic development actually is.
Another question was about the water and sewers, seeking grants for waters and sewers. I think it's ongoing cost of water and sewers that would be prohibitive. You'd probably be adding about $3,000 to the average taxpayer in Buckhorn. That would have to be borne by the individual on the system.
Well, I think again, Peter, I think the first steps there is to get some idea as to what could be done, because the new processing plants that they have are much more viable than what we think of as being the way that you treat sewage now. So that technology is out there. And I've been approached by a couple of people saying that you really do need to look at a different program here. So I think it's too soon to throw it out altogether. I think as you put the research out there and you spread your ideas, then find out if there's something that could apply.
Because water alone is around $1,000 per household a year.
Well, if you value the village, yes.
If I can just comment, I think that was an exploratory comment
Yeah.
during the committee meeting. I'm not even sure that belongs in this, but that's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not on the work plan
Yeah.
of the committee to explore that. So at this time, it was simply a comment.
Yeah.
But again, it's not part of the work plan for the committee.
Well, I think we have to be careful what gets put in our minutes
I agree.
and what goes out into the public,
I agree.
because it appears to the general public like the municipality is exploring the thought of water and sewers for the town of Buckhorn.
I think I brought a notice of motion forward to do just that. No, it didn't go? Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anybody else?
I will second the motion to receive the minutes.
Does anybody want to comment on the Parks and Rec and Advisory Committee, or we can do those later on? Okay, so did you make the motion with
I'll
comment?
make the motion to approve.
With the comment?
Yeah, or to
And the
receive.
seconder was Councillor Lambshead? Can we have the vote, please? All in favor? That motion is carried. Liaison reports from council boards and committees. Economic development. Would you like to comment on that?
I can. All I'm really going to do, thank you, Madam Mayor, is just to highlight a couple of things that were in the report. As you know, we gave them $66,000 out of their request of $83,000 for improvements in Odenek Park. And they have decided on what that will be spent for, and we'll work with Dylan Kosh, our manager of Parks and Facilities, on that. And it will include a Kawartha chair, a gazebo, the garden park, and as well as a gateway sign, all of which I believe, except the sign, were part of the streetscape green space report.
Can you say that 3 times?
Yeah, no, I can't. Once was hard enough. And the only other thing that came out of that was that there's a subcommittee for green space streetscape, and they will be working again with Dylan Kosh to work on a plan, literally not a floor plan, I guess it's a ground plan for how Odenek Park will absorb those different amenities. So I think that's it for.
Yep, that's good. Parks and Rec. Would you like to speak? Which one of you wants to?
Just that we, the comments are in our package about the support that we gave to the Buckhorn skating pad and some of the recommendations that we've made.
Okay.
And further, that the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is moving along. It's getting closer to its fruition. It's going back to staff for comments, and then it'll come to council. I'm sure there'll be some more public consultation.
Okay, thank you for that. And the PSB, Police Services Board, I guess that would be me. I get these acronyms all mixed up. We introduced, or were introduced to our new member, and she is going to be just a treat. So some of the questions that came up, we were asking the commander about making sure that when things come forward, similar to what the call that I got concerning the shooting, that we are given some sort of an update before the press calls us. And he said in this particular case, they actually got blindsided too. He said they didn't get the information. But he said they would make sure going forward that whatever they do get, they will pass to us so that we're familiar with that. And other than that, we had a pretty good meeting, but she's going to be a great addition. Library board, yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to steal Dylan's thunder because he has a report on this later, but just pulling out of the last library board meeting, the library was shut down briefly because during an inspection, something with the structure of the library was noted that raised some concerns, and we didn't want the staff working there until that was resolved. So people were brought in very quickly and finished or fixed the issue. And I think staff was only out for a day or two. But again, I'll let Dylan speak more to that in his report.
Well, I think that's good because I think that report needs to be spoken to. I thought the engineering, whatever on that was extremely expensive compared to what it actually costs to rectify the problem. But maybe that's just the cost of doing that. Donna, you're nodding. Okay, so we'll have a statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. We don't have one. Business arising from a statutory public meeting. We don't have one. Presentations, none today. Delegations, where we now have a delegation from Bill Thompson regarding Stony Lake Cruises. Please unmute your audio and or share your camera and make your delegation. You have 10 minutes and I will ask council that all questions are saved until the end of this delegation. Are you there, Bill? Calling Captain Bill.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, I had some trouble with my tablet, so I'm having to do this from my phone.
Well, you're coming across clearly, so go ahead.
Okay, great. Just introduce myself briefly. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the owner and the captain of the Spirit of the Kawarthas, which operated on Stony Lake for a half a season in 2019. The idea behind this, I met Randy Hinton, who owned the Kawartha Spirit in 2017. Back in 2015, he'd had an offer from Ambassador Tours out in Halifax that he couldn't refuse. And I met Randy working on a project for somebody else. And I thought, geez, this is a great deal, a great spot to put a boat. And I was fortunate enough, I actually found two that were almost exact sister ships to his. The first one that I'd found was going to need to be completely refitted and sit for about 15 years. And to get things going in September 2018, I started a website, and the first email I got was from a fellow out in Amherstburg telling me that the same boat as mine was for sale over in Detroit. A lot of my career was in Windsor. I actually started Pride of Windsor Cruises down here, Royal Windsor Cruises, Windsor River Cruises, and so I knew the boat. And it was built in Canada, but it had gone over to the States, and it was in great shape. And I was fortunate enough, I bought it in December 2018. When you bring a boat back into Canada that's out of the country, it has to meet the regulations for the year it came back. So that was an expensive process, but the boat was completely gone through by Transport Canada, taken out of the water, completely repainted, redecorated, refurbished, was in great shape. And then on the way up, we had some engine trouble at the Welland Canal, got it repaired, and 2 days later, they diagnosed the motor as destroyed. So we limped up to Bob Cajun actually to Captain Randy's marina on one engine. We replaced that motor, did the other work we needed to get finished for Transport Canada, left for Stony Lake. We got a mile and lost the other motor. And these motors had 900 hours on them. They should have been good for 10,000 hours. So not a great start. We didn't get started until August the 3rd. Did a great job. We have about 1,200 or so followers on Facebook. With a score of 4.6 out of 5, which is 90% approved, 92% approval rating. I've been doing this since 1985, and unfortunately, up in North Kawartha, there was a parking issue. I had to build a parking lot at my cost, and it had to be built on property that was owned by Viamead Resort. Viamead wouldn't put anything in writing. It was just difficult, caused some issues, and they finally informed council that they weren't going to let me use the parking lot that I built and paid for. So the solution was find a new home for the boat, and had a few meetings with the mayor and the Economic Development Committee. Included in the package that I sent you, Joe Reese from Peterborough Economic Development helped me. We did a template from Ontario Tourism that does economic impact, and says that the boat generates $1.9 million in economic impact. And I can say it generates a lot of money. I was shocked myself. I figured we'd get some people coming up from Toronto on day trips or overnight trips, and it's been, I was shocked at how good the numbers were. We're in the process right now, subject to getting a doc, of doing a brand new state-of-the-art website that the information we can glean on where people are coming from and the way we can track advertising and different things. We know where to go to find people. The boats, it's interesting, the two biggest cities for web clicks are Old Toronto, followed by Peterborough. And in our first season, we did 2 retirement parties, a convention for an insurance company, and a pharmacist association. So there's a good opportunity to bring charters like that, including weddings from Peterborough. The exposure for the boat, like I said, I was shocked with people coming from Belleville and Bowmanville, and they said, well, we used to go to Kingston or we used to go to Toronto, and we're sick of going on those cruises. So we came here this time. When I came up, I started talking about tour buses, and they told me I was crazy. And I put the hammer down. And March last year, before COVID struck, we had 14 tour buses booked. And that's great because they'll go somewhere else. They'll go to Kawartha Winery, or they'll stop at the Canoe Museum, or a tour, go for a hike somewhere. There's tremendous opportunities to put packages together with other partners. I was kind of shocked at Lion and their attitude. They said, look, let's work together on stuff. And I'd proven just by checking reservations that people would Google the boat to get directions. And of course, on the Google map, it showed Viamede right next door. So people book dinner on the boat and then book a room at Viamede. There's all kinds of great opportunities to put packages together to get these tour buses. I don't know whether the tour buses will be running this year. Weddings are great because they fill up hotel rooms. As I say, the boat's an attraction in itself. I was at a webinar last November, I believe it was, with the City of Kawartha Lakes Economic Development. And there were 4 ladies there that were from either tourist information centers or chambers of commerce. And they all commented and said the number one thing that people were coming into is, look, it's the Kawartha Lakes, we want to go out on the lake. And the one gal did go so far as to say that it was a major blow that Stony Lake Cruises didn't run due to COVID. So it's the only boat on a lake. Wherever it'll go, it will bring people. Like I say, it's a destination attraction on its own, as well as being an attraction for local people, day trippers, weekend getaways. Serves corporate market. It's just a great, great thing. It's kind of a dying business. The Passenger Vessel Association, we have an old boys club, and I'm the baby, and I'm going to be 60. And the cost now, you can't even afford to build a new boat in Canada anymore, and there just aren't that many around, and there aren't that many people that still love this business like I do. So basically, we're looking for a home, I guess, in Buckhorn, and I'd love to answer any questions.
Well, that's a good summary. Can we have questions, please? Yes, Carol.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Captain. I think in your report to Council, you detailed some of the requirements that you would have in order to be able to operate in the town of Buckhorn. I wonder if you could just share those with everybody on the line.
Yeah, essentially, we obviously need a dock. We need electrical power, and it's pretty minimal. It's 30 amp, 125, 250 volt service. And it would be nice to have fresh water. When we went out there and kind of visited the site and talked, I think, absolute worst case, you got to bring a water truck in. But I think, probably make arrangements with the general store and just run a hose out at night if we had to. So, the needs of the boat aren't great. Parking's up the street, and the boat's requirements are relatively minimal.
I think in conversation with Buckhorn Yacht Harbor too, I think they'll let you fill up the water there. So that should look after the water problems. How many cruises in a good day? How many cruises would you take out, Bill?
Well, with COVID, I've kind of backed off this year. The first year up in Stony Lake, we were doing Monday to Friday. We were doing 2 cruises a day. Wednesday, we were actually doing 3. And then Friday, Saturday, we do 3 each day. So it'd be, I think it was, I'm just going to jump without count. I think we were doing 14 a week was the average. But this year with COVID, and being a little bit nervous, we're gonna run the lunch cruise 7 days a week, which is 7. A sightseeing cruise, Saturday and Sunday would be 9. 2 dinner cruises would be 11, and craft beer and wine cruise on Wednesday night. So we're looking at 12 a week right now.
Now, my understanding is you've checked to make sure that there's enough water, and the Trent Canal has said there's enough space. Is that correct?
I've got to call into Lance. I just called him before the meeting. I haven't heard back. He's got he had to redo the map for some reason. What he submitted showed the dock at 40 feet. It actually needs to be 60. So we're just waiting on, I think, the gal to draw it up and give it to Chad to get it approved.
Questions, council?
I have a comment, but
Yep.
I think this is a great idea. This will bring some people to our whole area, and you can see what we look like from the water. And I think that's important to a lot of people.
Peter?
No, I have no questions.
Okay. Carol, any further?
Just a comment as well. I think this it could be a terrific opportunity for tourism and also our local businesses. Obviously, there would be an investment on the part of the municipality to build a dock and perhaps hydro. So we need to be cognizant of that and whether that can be done this year or next year, because we basically put our budget to bed. But there might either be grant monies or reserve monies to help support that. So I think that's kind of the next step, is to explore whether or not that is a reasonable investment that the municipality could look towards either this year or next. I personally have absolutely no idea how much money we would be talking about for a 60-foot dock and hydro. Captain Bill, do you have any sorts of ballparks on that?
I got one estimate from Jeff Ball, who's actually Carolyn Amyot's husband, and his estimate was for the dock $54,000. And insofar as the electrical, we think there's a post nearby that we can draw power from. I had to put a new panel in at the dock up in at Mount Julian. I'm almost half tempted to go up there and rip it out. I paid for it, so that was $1,200 to put in. To run an underground cable, or if the gazebo were to be built, it'd be a matter of one breaker and a cable. And that could even be depending on location of the gazebo. I mean, it could almost plug into there. I'm pretty a thrifty Scot, so if there's an economical way of doing it, I'll find it.
Well, and I think we have got hydro built into the pricing at the gazebo, do we not? Well, it's been in conversation. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more comment. The other thing that occurs to me is this dovetails very nicely with some of the other advances that are planned for Buckhorn this year, which are the sidewalks, as well as the pedestrian crossings. And in addition, the municipality has signed an agreement with BCC to be able to use the parking area next to the BCC, which is either a short walk or perhaps a shuttle bus away from the downtown area. So it does dovetail kind of nicely with some of the other things that were already on the plans. Again, I think this, I'm not sure where we go with this, but I think it's something that should and needs to be explored further, which might be a direction to staff around that without any commitment at this stage.
Well, I would concur with that. Terry?
Absolutely. I think this is a great chance to revitalize some of the downtown core.
Well, and any parking that you can get along that canal is going to do nothing but pay off. So whether it pays at this point or, because what do you do, Bill? You pay a certain amount of money to the municipality for the rental of that dock? Is that how that would work?
Yeah, I pay the municipality. It was about $2,400 a year, and then it went up about 3% a year. And like I say, I paid $18,000 to build that parking lot that I may or may not recover. I'm waiting to hear from the lawyer. And then the little devil came out last year and was going to charge me $3,000 to use my own parking lot. So in reality, knowing that the dock, it's almost funny, knowing that the dock costs, according to Jeff, $54,000. My thoughts were, I'll just throw this out there. I mean, I'm a pretty honest guy. Is that, if I have to pay $5,400, that's fine. If I move the boat, it's long term. And my lease with North Kawartha, and it's been with any boat, the city of Windsor or anywhere that I'd operated, is always 5 years with an option for another 5 years. So if I was paying $5,400, 10 years from now, Trent Lakes has their money back, and in the meantime, hopefully there's been 50 or 60,000 visitors that bought an ice cream cone or maybe even a canoe.
Or hopefully not a life jacket.
No, we've got those. I've got $12,000 worth of those darn things.
Anyway, I think that's been a great presentation, and I think council have you got all the questions answered you've got? So somebody want to make a motion to accept this delegation?
A motion to receive the delegation.
Okay, Councillor Lamb said, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Clarkson.
You're welcome.
Yep, bye-bye.
Staff reports, Public Works, Chelsea, Carpenter, Waste.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
I wondered if we could do two things. One is determine if there's anything we need to do to move this forward. But even before that, I'm wondering if we should get any input, and I don't want to put you on the spot, our CIO, but do you have any comments on this? And if not, that's fine.
Yeah. So through you, if you want to direct staff, we can have a look at this for sure and see if we can get some costing and see the Parks Canada angle, because we have to make sure that's covered as well. So we
And
can
the
look
other
into that.
company to look for is the, because that's Kawartha that he got the price from. But the other one that does an awful lot of that work is the one that, and he's doing a break on the kayaks, the kayak racks, and he's the one that's between Lakefield Turn and
RJ Machine.
RJ Machine. And those docks can be portable. There's 2 or 3 different ways of producing those, but the portable ones would be floated around into the bay at Oak Bay. So they've already said that they would help to do that. So that takes them out of they would take them out where they're sheltered, where they can go up and down with the ice without breaking them all to pieces. Otherwise, they've actually got to be taken out. And that's the price goes up drastically as they become removable. I was down there when they did that.
So through you as well, I would want to speak to our insurer as well, because that's going to be a factor for sure.
Okay.
So if council is in agreement, and I guess we'll find it from a vote.
Yeah.
Then let me table a motion that council defer to staff to do a feasibility study of putting a dock in Buckhorn that potentially could be rented out for the Spirit of the Kawarthas, to look at the sustainability and finances of that, to review the relationship and the contract that was previously in place between the boat and the municipality of North Kawartha, and I think check any legal or insurance requirements. If I've forgotten something, somebody please help.
I'll second that. Unless you want to second that, Terry, because I think you already
No,
did
I'm just
anyway.
thinking we want to make sure we have whatever possible locations. We need to talk with Parks Canada and the possibility of hydro to the docks.
Thank you. I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, can we have the vote, please? All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, folks, Chelsea Carpenter, Waste Management Public Works Coordinator. Waste and
Thank you.
recycling summary.
Thank you, Mayor Clarkson, and through you. I have prepared the annual waste and recycling summary for 2020. In this report, I have included facts to highlight some of the significant quantities and help put them into perspective. I've also shown some interesting information on the battery recycling process to give you an idea of what happens with the batteries after they are collected from our transfer station sites. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions, anybody? Chelsea, do you see where there would be an advantage in putting a scale in the busiest waste transfer sites so that people could be filtered there to take away the concerns that people are saying where I pay this for my load, I don't pay that for somebody else's load? Do you see that those scales would be beneficial?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, I do see that there would be, or do feel that there would be some benefits to having the scales. Staff would need to do some more research into the cost of scales and the changes in operations that would be required. But I do see there being some advantages to offering scales at one site.
Anybody on council agree with that or not? Or would be interested in having her come back with some pricing on that? Go ahead,
So
Terry.
I'm just wondering what we're going to be weighing. Like,
I guess you weigh building materials and what all do you weigh, Chelsea? Because there's a lot of things that you just you guess of what the weight's going to be and charge accordingly, right?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, right now we charge by the cubic yard. So when residents come in with material such as construction and demolition material, they're charged based on the cubic yard. However, the municipality is charged based on the weight of the material for disposal. So when the material goes to another facility for disposal, we are charged by the weight. So however many tons there are. So having scales would allow the municipality to be able to compare to see how much it costs the municipality to dispose of that material in comparison to the tipping fees that are received for disposal when residents bring in that material.
Councillor Franzen?
Just a comment, Mayor Clarkson. I believe that we should stay consistent at our 4 landfill sites. If we're weighing at one site, we should be weighing at all of the sites.
Any other comments?
I do agree with that in the long term, but I think a pilot project wouldn't be out of the question to see what our costs are. If we're not taking in enough dollar value, then we should be changing that, or we could be charging too much for our other things.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. That might be a good idea. I am concerned at the moment. We know that there are many more people who are up here now and are visiting our landfill sites. The volume is up 13%, which is actually surprisingly low given the numbers. I would be a little concerned about laying on one more responsibility to our landfill attendants right now. So I'm not sure the timing is ideal for exploring that.
Sometime take a drive through Bensford and see how slick that's done. Because where now you've got somebody in that little office that gets you to stamp the things, they just simply look and see what the scales was and it's not onerous. I'd be interested to know what scales are worth. Just to find out if it's even something that's feasible. Would you, Chelsea, would you have any idea what the scales run at?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. As per Donna's email, she sent out an email regarding a grant that we were hoping to be able to apply for, and it was going to be for the purchase of weigh scales. So I have a few emails out, and I am just waiting on a couple of quotes. And speaking with a couple of other municipalities such as Selwyn and Duro-Dummer and City of Kawartha Lakes, they provided some information on where they have purchased scales in the past, and I've reached out to those companies and I'm waiting on a quote.
Okay, so we certainly wouldn't be leading the pack by any means.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, Selwyn has a landfill, and City of Kawartha Lakes, their scales is also at their landfills. Duro-Dummer does have a transfer station, but they have weigh scale, they only have the one transfer station. So I think if weigh scales were wanted by council at all 4 sites, we would really want to look at the quantities coming in to ensure that it would be worthwhile, because a couple of our less busy sites don't see a lot of material that is weighed.
Okay, well, I think I think Chelsea's got the information coming in that we need. And I think when we get that costing, Donna, when does that grant have to be applied for?
So through you, that is I did provide council with an update. We won't be able to apply for that grant because the municipality has not spent all of the funds we received through a previous efficiency grant in 2019. But we did look to perhaps this or composting or potentially some connectivity type work. So we will get the information on potential uses of that efficiency grant money and come back to council. We will provide you with some choices there.
Okay. Meanwhile, we will have a price on what a set of scales are worth.
Yes.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Yes. Motion to receive. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Franzen. And all in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you, Chelsea. Well done. But you're not a free yet. We want to hear about your pilot mattress collection.
Thank you, Mayor Clarkson, and through you.
Bugs.
I have prepared a report regarding a pilot mattress collection event to be hosted by the Municipality of Trent Lakes. A waste management initiative identified to council for 2021 was to investigate the potential for a one-day mattress disposal event, in addition to the Environment Day, where in the past mattresses have been accepted. An opportunity was identified with a company called Recyc Mattress. After some discussions with Recyc Mattress to determine best options, they provided a quote for a 3-day mattress collection event to be held at the Bob Cajun transfer station. Final dates to be determined. All mattresses and box springs to be collected at the event will be subject to a disposal fee. I provided a chart to show the distribution of the recyclable matter found in mattresses and also a link that demonstrates the mattress recycling process. If you have any questions on my report, I would be happy to answer them.
I guess the question I would have is to council. When we first stopped taking mattresses, we got a lot of heat. And I think anymore, people have got the idea that if you buy a mattress, the company takes the mattress away. I'd be interested to know just what the demand would be for that. And I guess if it's a pilot, is it going to cost us if not much material shows up?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Back when mattresses were decided to not be accepted at our transfer station, we did track how many incoming mattresses there were, and it wasn't a significant number, which is why that contributed to the decision to no longer accept mattresses. I do know that I do receive calls regarding mattresses the odd time, and our attendants do track when people come in with a mattress and they refuse that mattress, as we don't accept them. So I could certainly go through those forms to determine how many are refused when coming to the site.
Is this pilot program costing us, or is this being done by who's paying for this pilot project?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. So we did receive a quote in the amount of $1,200, and that's for Recyc Mattress to deliver a trailer where we would put the mattresses in, and the trailer would be kept on site for the 3 days, and then Recyc Mattress picks up the trailer and takes it back to their facility. There is also an additional cost of $14 per mattress or box spring charged to the municipality, and that's where a disposal fee would be determined to help offset some of those costs.
So I'm hearing $1,200 plus or minus a bit.
Plus, however many mattresses come in, there would be a $14 fee charged to the municipality. However, if the municipality decides to charge $20 per mattress, then that money would go towards any of the costs that are incurred.
Okay, and you said this was Bob Cajun you were going to do this at?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, that's correct. As the Environment Day is hosted at the Buckhorn transfer station. So we were trying to provide this service in another area of the municipality, and Bob Cajun is open on Fridays, Saturday, and Sunday during summer hours.
All right, comments? Yes.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would make a motion to receive this report, and I see, Chelsea, that you've not asked for us to make any approvals at this stage. I'm assuming that's because you will come back to us at a later date with a request for us to proceed or not.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, I can certainly do that if council wishes. The money that is required to run this program is in the approved budget, so that money was going to be spent in the approved budget. But if council wishes to for a report to come forward to approve this event, I can certainly do that.
Councillor Lambshead, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think this is a way for our ratepayers to dispose of other products in our municipality rather than taking a drive to Peterborough with a mattress tied to the top of their car. It's a great pilot project. I think it would be worth doing. I think, I would like to look at the information gathered previously to how many actually come in. But I had many comments when we didn't take mattresses that it was such a frustrating event to take it to the transfer station and then have to take it to Peterborough later. It would be a way to resolve that.
Yes.
Then through Madam Mayor, I would withdraw my motion based on that information and instead make a motion to receive the report and to authorize staff to proceed with this pilot, given that one, it is already, the 1,200 is already in the budget. And number two, we use that as an opportunity to gauge the quantity and the demand for this going forward.
And would you like to second that?
I will second that. We should probably decide what a cost per mattress would be.
And I think it would be very interesting to track where they're coming from.
Mhm.
Because before, when we've done some of these things, people have come down from the city and brought their items. And be interesting to know when they show up, where they originated. We don't need to be disposing of somebody else's products. Okay, you wanted to know, there's another question there. What was it? Yes, Peter?
I was going to make a comment. I also agree that it's a good idea. It stops people from burning their mattress on the front lawn and bringing the springs into the landfill site. And I think the cost should be $20.
Now, what were the variety of costs?
I do agree with the $20. I mean, we're not here to make money. We're just here to cover the cost of taking the Bensford and the $1,200. I think that's a reasonable amount. It ranges anywhere from 30 down to 12,
There
I
it is,
think,
there
on
it
that
is.
list. We would hit in the middle somewhere.
No, I agree. That's.
And I amend my motion again.
Is this a friendly amendment?
Also defer to staff to set the amount per mattress suggested at $20 and let staff make that operational decision.
And are you still okay with that?
Absolutely.
All in favor? Carried. Well done, Chelsea. I know
Thank
where you're
you.
going to be spending. I know where you're going to be spending your Saturday.
Thank you.
Okay, recreation facilities. Dylan, are you there? And this is
I'm
Dylan,
here.
Director of Recreation and Facilities concerning the Buckhorn Library repairs.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you have a report summarizing the events at the library, as well as a request for approval from transfer reserves to pay for that. I did hear that some council members maybe had some concern regarding the price. It's not out of line of what I expected it to be. It is certainly a large sum of money. But essentially with an engineer, you're paying for their stamp and their expertise to take on the liability of the design that they have provided and not so much the actual repair itself. So they've designed something, they've said that that will solve the problem, and then they come back and said that that repair was done in conformance with that design, and therefore they are taking on more of the liability to say that this building is, you know, safe again in terms of that deficiency. So if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Do we have a question or a comment?
Just a comment. Thanks for getting it done. It's important to get staff back in there to do their work.
Okay, so have we got a seconder for that?
No.
Pardon?
I could make that a motion that we receive that and that we approve the transfer from the library capital reserve to fund the conditional assessment undertaken by Greenview and recommended repairs undertaken.
Okay, so that motion is made by well-spoken Councillor Lambshead, and the seconder would be Councillor Armstrong. You sure you don't want to change it? All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Dylan. Now, Buckhorn Sports Pad feasibility study.
Thank you to you, Mayor and Council. As requested, staff were requested to bring forward a scope within 30 days with regards to a feasibility study. So we have reached out to the Buckhorn Community Center and the PRCAC, received their input, and factored both of those into the scope in the background section of the report there. I believe that we've encompassed all of their requests as well as any concerns through staff here within this scope. So we're looking for to receive this report for information and to approve the scope and to direct staff to proceed with the issuance of an RFP for this project.
Do we have questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Dylan. I have heard that you've, from both BCC and the committee, that you have listened and incorporated their suggestions for this. The question I have, and it's still not clear to me, in the language of the RFP, are we asking for a consultant to look at all viable options for operation of the rink at the BCC site, period? Or are we asking the consultant to look at all viable options for the rink pad at BCC and any other location?
Through you, Mayor. The wording here, I guess, does not specifically state at the BCC site only. I guess we can certainly add that in if that is the direction of council that we are only considering at that site. I may have misunderstood a little bit there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just want to be very clear in terms of what we are asking and what the expectation will then be.
If I might comment, I think until the Buckhorn site is clarified, if something happens in the Buckhorn, if the BCC site works, there won't be any need to do the other site. So I think they have to be done independently so that we don't pile costs upon costs.
Sure.
So that
Through
would
you.
be just the seaside we're talking about. in
I
terms
would,
of scope.
I would think so.
That
Now,
makes sense.
some of this, such as washrooms and these things, that's not a such as, that's a given. I would refer this to building and planning because I think that building itself is going to have certain requirements that don't need to be built into this document. Yes, Dawn.
So through you. So the process, should council direct staff proceed, would be to create an RFP for this work based on what Dylan has in this document. And at that time, we would seek staff direction as well, input into that RFP process.
Okay, yes,
I'd like to make that a motion.
okay,
Second, that
okay. All in favor?
Can we
gets you.
just want to clarify what the motion is?
Yeah.
So the motion is to receive the report and approve the issuance in RFP.
Yeah.
With the scope being at the BCC site.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Now, so we did the vote on this, right, Jesse? No, we haven't. All in favor? And that vote is carried. Fire and emergency services, none. Building and planning, Chris Jones, planning consultant for an application amendment for Dewdney Mountain Farms. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Welcome. Have at it.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. So you have my February 23rd planning report with respect to the Dewdney Mountain Farms application for zoning bylaw amendment. And as council is aware, this particular memo flows from the council's December 2nd council meeting and resolution, which received my November 24th report and looked for a summary outlining required studies, what was submitted and when, confirmation with respect that information submitted is acceptable, as well as information with respect to the haul route agreement. So what I did for in this memo for council's review and consideration was the summary that I provided in the table attached as Appendix 1. And, oh good, you can go landscape. So what I've provided in this table, just for council's understanding and benefit, is again a summary of the original technical submissions that were originally provided with the applications for OPA and ZBA. Those are requirements under section 510(5)Q of the official plan. Then I've summarized the author and the date of the original submission. I also noted where peer reviews or clearances were, agency clearances were provided. I've indicated who was responsible for that. Then, as we're aware, these applications were adjudicated by the Ontario Municipal Board, and so again, for council's understanding and benefit, I have identified where experts were called to provide evidence with respect to either the original submission or to provide a countering opinion, i.e. By the appellant. And so again, we have an understanding then of the information or the studies that were vetted by the board, as well as the experts that were called and provided testimony at the board. And then again, just because I've spent a lot of time reviewing these various board decisions, I did in that last column under OMB remarks, if I found what I thought was a salient quote that related to the technical report or the nature of the issue, the planning issue, then I've captured that for council's information and background. And so again, just to summarize from my report, OPA 41, as we're aware, so if we just, sorry, Jesse, if we just go back to page 1 of my report. Yeah, so OPA 41 is that is, of course, the official plan amendment that it was originally applied for to redesignate these lands for aggregate resource extraction. As we're aware, the OMB approved that OPA. So that OPA is in effect. It effectively is a policy, if you will, that has status in our current official plan. The zoning bylaw amendment, of course, was not approved, and it was not approved on the basis of the again, issues related to the haul route and noise and mitigation related to that. And that was at the top of page 2, that really was the sole issue that that prevented the board from proceeding with an approval with respect to the zoning amendment. So then again, we move forward into present day, which is the current application. So the 2018 OMB hearing that was held, that was a hearing specific to hearing evidence with respect to noise and impacts resulting from the haul route. The board did not find the justification and material submitted on with respect to haul route impacts to be satisfactory, and it was on that basis that the amendment was denied. Again, so that brings us to present day, which has brought forward the new technical information that relates to this fairly singular issue of the haul route, as well as noise and traffic technical study that again provides that justification. The key distinction, of course, is that at the time of the 2018 hearing and leading up to that, the notion was that noise resulting from the haul route could be mitigated through measures installed either on the road allowance or on private property. And well, private landowners were not lining up to have mitigation features installed on their property, and the board did not find that the technical submission that related to noise mitigation on the road allowance itself was acceptable. So the key takeaway with the new justification or the new work that has come forward is essentially it's a proposal that would see the haul route function without barriers or physical noise barriers or mitigation. The council was looking for some additional information just with respect to the haul route. So again, we are in receipt of a draft agreement, and my standing recommendation is for that draft agreement to be received and forwarded to our solicitor for review and consideration. But the primary components of that agreement relate to things like construction obligations, design and specifications, completion of works, maintenance and warranty, truck traffic restrictions. It's a legal agreement that's essentially intended to require the developer or the operator to proceed in and following a specific number of parameters or conditions. Now, again, council did speak to the issue of current environmental geographic conditions. And again, it's a bit broad in terms of my understanding or what I'm being asked to sort of deliver. But certainly, if as part of decision making and consideration of the information that's before us, if again circumstances and issues have changed out there that require some sort of specific consideration, in my mind, the decision-making part of this process, which will involve peer review consultants, would assist in vetting those issues out. On item 6 of my report, I do speak to current provincial policy because, as I've already indicated, and as council is aware from some of the applications that have come forward since the new growth plan has come into effect, the growth plan has created a higher bar, so to speak, with respect to restrictions adjacent to or within natural heritage features. So for instance, just as an example, pre-2017 growth plan, we essentially operated for many, many years in sort of separating or distinguishing between types of wetlands. And this was not just a Trent Lakes thing. This was a provincial policy statement thing. So wetlands that had what we call PSW, or provincially significant wetland status, by virtue of an evaluation, were given sort of heightened protection over, quote, other wetlands, i.e. wetlands that had not been evaluated. The growth plan has changed that by making all wetlands equal. And that has had a big impact on some applications in process that we have been dealing with. When it comes to aggregates, however, the growth plan very specifically sets out an exemption for mineral aggregate applications in process, and that is a factor with this application, because this is an application which was previously declared complete by the Ministry of Natural Resources. So that's my summary, Madam Mayor and members of council. And again, any questions or discussion at this point, feel free.
Chris, your last statement leaves me scratching my head. You said that this was deemed complete. Then if it was deemed complete, why are we doing this again?
The Ministry of Natural Resources under the Aggregate Resources Act process. So it's a separate process where, as we're aware, to extract gravel, you need an ARA license. And so that application was previously submitted, and the MNR received that application as being complete in accordance with the Aggregate Resources Act. And so by virtue of them having that application or that consideration in hand, they are exempt from growth plan requirements as it relates to natural heritage impacts.
Questions? Councillor Franson.
I still have a problem with the haul route. I have a hard time deeming the application complete with that haul route and with the dust mitigation. I don't believe that haul route is adequate for truck and vehicular traffic. It needs a total rebuild. It would be very, very dangerous route. And I'd have a hard time approving that road for the haul route for that quarry.
Comments or questions from other council members? Councillor Lamshead.
I concur with Councillor Franson. How do you make that safe for truck traffic and personal vehicular traffic and pedestrians. It doesn't seem like it's a doable thing. And there are sections in all these acts that say it has to be health and safety. You know, it has to be a safe haul route. So I think there's things that we need to really consider.
Councillor Scott?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I concur with both of what Councillor Branson and Councillor Lentz had said. A couple of comments, if I may. I mean, first of all, I'd like to thank and appreciate the work that's been done by Chris, and appreciate the patience of the applicant as we have requested and received sufficient information to reach an informed decision. Remember, this only came to council November 17th, and there is a very long history on this file, as well as some very complicated requirements that we've needed to get up to speed to. So thank you for helping us along that and being patient. Secondly, one of the sources of great confusion for me throughout this process, and I think others, has been whether this is a new application or it's the same application. And if it's the same application, then the OMB decision in 2018 certainly applies, which is to say that the only outstanding issue was around the haul route. If it's a new application, then we need to look to see if all of these studies comply with the current physical and legislative environment. And we have heard flip-flops on whether it's new or old continuously, and I think we've treated it by different parties differently. So that has really muddled up this whole discussion in my personal opinion. I'm inclined to look at it as a new application. We've got 4 new studies that were submitted with it that replaced old ones. The nature and the scope of the operation has changed since the initial application where these studies were submitted. And again, as I said, the environment has changed. So if we look at it as a new application, then I am inclined to suggest it is not complete, that we do need an executed or agreed upon haul route agreement. I would incorporate the 2 other things that you had included, Chris, which were for an up-to-date set of ARA site plans, as well as a technical memo to support the engineering drawings, or perhaps that is taken care of with the haul route agreement. And I'm not entirely sure that we don't need some of the reports to be validated by their originators, that in fact they do comply with the new 2020 PPS revisions. And those would be the hydrogeological, the environmental impact, the blasting impact, and the archaeological study, all of which are the early ones and had not been updated. So I didn't put a motion forward, but that's my thinking on it at this stage, having gone through as much of the previous history and reports that I have been able to.
Chris, in addressing some of Carol's concerns, these reports that she's speaking of, would they have changed substantially in terms of any updates that the province has done? Or is the requirement much the same now as it was back then? Like, would we be repeating just for the sake of repeating? Or has there been enough change to warrant looking at it from a different lens?
Before, if I may, just to clarify what I was saying, I'm not looking for those 4 reports to be redone at this stage, but rather to go back to the authors to just provide a statement as to whether or not they still comply with the PPS.
Right.
Yeah, so sorry, it's back to me, Madam Mayor.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think there's if just trying to look at this very practically, because it's not lost in me that this process has been drawn out, and by virtue of OMB proceedings in court, it's been acrimonious at times. So looking at it from sort of one perspective, and I guess let's say this is the applicant's perspective. If they were requested to essentially resubmit in accordance with that checklist, I rather imagine what they would send to us would be a repackaging of the original submissions. And I think their justification for repackaging them would be if they were acceptable in 2014 or 2015, if they're acceptable to the board and were vetted by the experts that prepared them, as well as by your peer review consultants, then they should be good enough to re-support this new application. But more specifically to Councillor Armstrong's point, if and I don't think I've ever precluded that sort of the entire box of information dating back to the original application is certainly there. It's on the public record as this process unfolds. I don't think anybody is saying if you want to comment on this application, it has to be specific to the new items per se. But if it's a matter of seeking an opinion or letter from the original author of the study, or the peer review consultant that looked at it, I think either of those options would not be unreasonable in terms of if council's primary concern is ensuring that they have that if there has been a change in the landscape, and to your question, I don't think there has been a substantial change in the landscape. We do have a new PPS, we do have a new growth plan, but I don't think the new policy introduced by those puts this application back behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So yeah, if council is looking for, again, a letter from the original author, or again, sort of an assessment or an opinion from the peer reviewers of those reports, that they are still valid for the purpose of proceeding with this new application, then that's something that we could either ask for or we could coordinate.
Chris, the question that I have, and I think I'm speaking for council as well. We have a tough time understanding why you can get this far along with one and not the haul route, because at the end of the day, the haul route is going to be the sticky wicket. So why are we not really diving into that one and solving that one? Because if that one can't be solved, I don't think you're going to get council to go along with the rest of it. If you look at noise, if that road is constructed the way it has been suggested, noise is going to be pretty much mitigated, because asphalt is not going to create the type of noise that gravel is. It would settle the dust dispute. But to put it to the very end of these discussions, in my view, is backwards.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, to put what to the end of the discussion? The haul route?
Well, the haul route, yes, because to me, the haul route is I think it's this, the rest of these reports with very little change are going to come out basically the same.
Yes.
What we're concerned about is what this haul route is going to look like, how sustainable it is, to make sure that when it is built, if it's built with asphalt or whatever, that it's a material that's not going to break down with these trucks in 2 or 3 years and leave the municipality with a mess. To me, it's the problem, it's the sticker, because we have not had any kind of concrete information as to how this haul route is going to work, how it's going to be constructed, and how it's going to settle within that community.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, again, I don't have the benefit of being able to go back and say, well, here's what I was thinking in 2010 or 2011, because I wasn't there then. But what is apparent to me, as I've read these decisions many times, is again that the issue of the haul route and impacts resulting from the haul route, again, as the process evolved, became essentially the sort of the galvanizing planning issue, to the point that at this juncture, it really is the primary issue which the proponent is still trying to address. Now, when you go back to the start of the process, the proponent, like all mineral aggregate proponents, had a broad spectrum or broad scope of issues to address, and they did that. And that information was found acceptable to the board. The haul route, though, again, remained outstanding, and so that's one of the reasons why I think we find ourselves at this juncture. There perhaps wasn't sufficient information to help address the haul route issue throughout the original approval process, which is why we find ourselves at this point. In I guess, credit to the proponent, they have again provided information that I think with the construction drawings and this draft agreement, I think will help council at least begin to understand the proposal that's being put forward by the proponent. But that's a proposal that really it's appropriate to consider in the context of this planning approval, because as you say, a lot turns on it. But the information, unlike the prior process, the information with respect to a construction plan, improvements, and an agreement to that relates to those improvements, as well as the use of that haul route, that's all been provided, and it's sort of sitting on the conveyor belt in this sort of stalled state. And if council is prepared to declare it complete, they can then again they can turn that over to their peer review engineering consultant and lawyer and start to get some insight as to whether the construction specifications and the terms of the agreement are something that are acceptable.
But Chris, how do we deem that complete if that haul route isn't complete? Because how can you say you've got a complete application if that application does not contain the haul route? I don't know how you divorce one from the other.
No, and I don't think I'm trying, Madam Mayor, I don't think I'm trying to divorce it. In fact, it's a fundamental part of this submission. And I think, again, the proponent has provided a legitimate proposal in the way of detailed construction plans and a detailed development agreement, which I think, again, are worthy of council's consideration. It's not complete as in, and this is where, if we're misinterpreting anything, by declaring it complete, you're not accepting it. You're not saying this is good and this is the way forward. All you're saying is this is acceptable for public information, for consultation, and to help inform ourselves as a council and municipality if we believe these measures to be acceptable.
I don't know how you separate one from the other. Like, to me, if we deem it complete, we've accepted it for what it is. I don't see where that's just does anybody else have a conversation? Terry?
Yeah, I think for me, the sticking point here is this a new application? If we deem that this is a new application, then I would like to know that all the previous studies are current and valid and reflect the wishes of the provincial policy statement and our official plan. It could simply be a review by the authors, or it could be a review by someone else. But I also would like to have some sort of aggregate professional tell me whether this is a new or old application. I think we need some input from someone that's in this field that knows this exact idea, whether this is new or not.
Carol, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing really more to add other than we have received a letter from a lawyer supporting that particular opinion that it is new. We haven't had anything from our lawyer. I would prefer that we had that guidance as well, because how we view this is very different, whether it's new or it's existing. But the primary difference is whether or not the OMB decision clears everything except for the haul route or not. However, I think enough things have changed, and even the applicant has submitted some new studies that, and we've referred to it as a new application, so I'm inclined to treat it as a new application. That the challenge with trying to get more opinion before we rule on this is that we prolong this. And, everybody's been fairly patient up to this point.
Chris,
Sorry,
go ahead. Where would we see a detailed plan? Because I haven't seen it. I missed it. On what the haul route is going to be, like what the depth of the asphalt's going to be, what the warranty is going to be. Where have we got something like that in writing that we can?
So, Madam Mayor, the planning department is in receipt of those drawings. So we have them, and by declaring this application complete and allowing the peer review process to proceed, all of that information can become public. So that's again part of the coordination with the decision to declare this complete is if every time somebody came with a proposal and that all found its way into the agenda, if council for one reason or another was not did not accept the proposal, then all that information is out there and on the public agenda. This step that the Planning Act creates of complete application is to sort of formalize that a decision-making process can proceed, and that the information that has been submitted is available for public review.
I guess what I don't understand is why we can get this much information, but we can't get the haul route information, which is, in my view, the sticky wicket here. So I don't know why this can be public and that piece that's so darned important, we're not allowed to see until this goes forward. I can't see, I wouldn't let those go forward without the haul route. That's just one vote. I don't know what the justification is in keeping the two of them separate. Anybody else?
Just if I may, Madam Mayor, I'm understanding your point, Chris, and there's some merit in it, that if we declare the application complete, then the haul route agreement that has been proposed can be subject to public input and discussion, and council would have the benefit of that public input before deciding whether or not to accept that haul route agreement as proposed or as amended. So I'm seeing that point. But another question I would ask is the proponent prepared to pay for all of these peer reviews at the risk of, at the end of the day, finding out the haul route agreement is not acceptable? So it really is a chicken and egg issue here, which, I could go either way. I could see that we hold this back until we have agreed upon a haul route contract, or that, it's considered complete because we have a proposal, even though nobody's seen it. And then we open it up for discussion, review, and input.
Yes, Councillor Franzen.
Through you, Mayor. Chris, that haul route, is that fait accompli that they're going to be using the municipal road as a haul route for that quarry?
If I heard the question correctly, is the municipal road going to be used for the haul route for the quarry, like Legend Quarry Road? Is that the question? Yeah, it's Legend Quarry Road. Out to the county.
Alternative?
Sorry, say that.
There's no alternative haul route?
Can you say that?
He said, is there no alternative haul route?
To my knowledge, no. I believe there was a point in time before I became involved with this file that alternate haul routes were investigated, but we find ourselves back with a proposal to upgrade Legend Quarry for the purpose of this haul route. So if alternatives were investigated historically, I can only surmise that from the proponent's perspective, their preferred scenario is to proceed with ledge and quarry as the haul route.
Well, I was here at that time, and the one route, the bridge had to be rebuilt that goes across the creek up here, and it would still bring the people down through that development. So that really wouldn't solve long term. And the other one, I think it actually had to come out onto the quarry, I believe, which was a fairly, it wasn't going to be very, it wasn't advised that that would be accessible. It was the better of the two, but I don't think it had any, legs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a question for you, Chris. If we were to propose a motion that this is declared incomplete until such time as a haul route agreement has been made between the municipality and the proponent, I'm just posing this as a question hypothetically, would the municipality be able to seek public input on that haul route agreement at this stage? So that we could have a full decision made on the haul route, and then once that's decided upon, we could then declare it complete.
So through the mayor to Councillor Councillor Armstrong, sorry. Again, can you do it that way? You'd be creating sort of a separate consultation exercise. Part of the benefit of the zoning bylaw amendment process is that all of the information pertinent to the decision or the consideration can be considered at the same time and through the same consultation. So in fact, I'm not proposing any separation. I'm proposing that this information has come in as a collective submission. The road improvement drawings, the agreement, together with revised noise and traffic studies. And my advice is that all of that information should be directed to the appropriate peer reviewers and professionals to give yourselves some feedback as to whether you could have an engineer look at those construction drawings and not agree with it. You could have your peer review engineer look at the traffic report and not agree with it, or have trouble with the methodology. So that's where my suggestion is, if we're going to go forward with sort of a rational decision-making model, that all of that information goes forward for consideration at the same time.
I guess where I have a bit of a problem is this has been going on for a long time. We've had pushback from all the people who have built along that road. And at one point it was pretty much ready to go forward. And from that time on, people have continued to build and build and build with the idea that there was going to be a quarry at the end of that road. And now we're going to go back to these people who have built there, knowing very well what was at the end of the road, that are going to start to look at this whole process as if it's brand new. And I guess for me, I don't know where it's going to end. At some point, somebody's going to have to say enough is enough, because the township can't afford to drag this on any further. The quarry certainly can't. And the individuals that are affected by this are going to have to recognize the fact that there is a quarry at the end of that road, and that we're going to try to get the best agreement we can get for everybody involved. But there is no way at this point that that quarry is not going to be there. So that's not going to be a popular thing to say. But at the end of the day, with the provincial policy statement that says there shall be quarries, we're a pretty little pea in this pod. Comment? Go ahead, Councillor Lambshead.
Section 11.11 of our agenda has a letter from Eric Gillespie, which is probably a good read before we make any decisions on this right now. So is it possible to defer a decision on this till later on our agenda, or Or I know the proponent will not be liking that, but nor Chris, with all the effort you've put in. I realize there's been a lot of effort put into this. But perhaps we could read the letter from section 11.11 to give us a little more information.
Do you want to take a couple of minutes and read that letter? Might as well do it now than later.
I don't know that we're allowed to step out of that in our.
Well, it's part of the agenda, is it not?
For you, one question to Councillor Lamb said that correspondence didn't have any action related to it, so it's just on the agenda for information and was intended to be provided to council to help them in their decision with this agenda item. So I would say it's appropriate to have discussion about that agenda, about that correspondence here, because it was provided to assist council with that decision.
So go ahead, Terry.
Well, there's many. I'm not going to read the whole letter. It's several pages, but initially it was evident that the material submitted by the proponent from the opinion offered by the municipal planning consultant. This is a new application. Specifically, the proponent has revised the nature and scope of the proposed operations by dramatically reducing the allowable annual tonnage, which I do not know if that's happened, but and that could extract it from the site. It also appears that a minimum from the proponent's blasting report and the nature of the application has expanded beyond the scope of the dimensional stone quarry, which materially significantly impacts the many of the other reports. Consequently, the applicant's application now before council is clearly not the same application that council, the OMB, LPAT, and the divisional court considered. So just with that one paragraph, there's many more corroborating paragraphs. It makes me think that the application is new, and I would like a new report on every one of those studies. I don't mean a new study, I mean a new report on each one of those studies before.
So a peer review.
No, the author of the study to have a clear understanding that we consider this a new report.
Chris, comment, please.
So, Madam Mayor, I've already said that if whether it's part of the complete application or council would like to integrate it in the direction of today's resolution, whatever that becomes, that the original authors of the studies be sought out and provided a supplemental or an opinion letter as to whether their study is appropriate in the context of today's policy and technical requirements. Then if that's council's prerogative, they can request that.
Carol, you have a comment?
I was going to make an attempt at a motion.
Okay. Peter, have you another comment before I take the motion here?
No, it was, I received also another letter from Ted Oates, who's also a lawyer, and both lawyers said that possibly council needed a second opinion.
Carol, go ahead.
Let me pose this as a motion. That at this time, council considers the application not complete, and we request the following from the applicant. Number one, a statement from the originators of 4 studies that they are compliant with the revised PPS of 2020. Those 4 studies are the original ones for hydrogeologic, environmental impact study, blasting impact study, and archaeology study. Number 2, we would require an up-to-date set of ARA site plans, as Chris has said, which reflect evidence and commitments relied upon in prior OMB decisions. And number 3, that council has reviewed and gives preliminary acceptance, not approval, but acceptance of the haul route agreement. That wording, please help me with. So those would be the 3 requirements under which we would then consider this a complete application.
Now, would you accept in there taking into account any changes in legislation from the time that this went, plus changes in the proposed usage of the quarry, whether it's blasting or tonnage or whatever it
Yeah,
happens
those
to
are
be.
the only 4 studies that haven't been updated.
But the requirements of the quarry has changed. Like what the quarries are asking for is different. So,
I'm sorry, yes,
so with what they're
Yes.
asking as being different,
yes,
does it affect these studies?
yes. Let me amend that to say that we require a statement from the originators of these 4 studies to confirm that their reports comply with revised PPS of 2020, reflect the operation of both dimensional stone and an aggregate quarry, and are still valid today given any new residential development on the Hall reports. So that was all part of part 1 about getting a statement. Thank you for that. I did have that here.
Okay, do we have a comment on this motion? I think it's well said. Chris, would you like to weigh in on this before we make a big?
No, I've talked enough.
Anymore. Would you like us to put a deadline on this, or can you put a deadline on this? Because there's got to be an end to this for everybody. So what do you think is reasonable to get these, to get this information back? What should we request of the proponent? And I guess
Well,
that.
I think, again, this is going to be something, this request is going to go back to the proponent. So it'll be something that they are responsible for obtaining. So I'm in that vein, I think they will act with some dispatch, but I mean, if you wanted to provide a deadline, end of March, or.
Well, I think it's up to them to be as expedient as possible. There's probably no reason to put that time frame on. I still would like to see mention of the Hall route in this, but
I think that wasn't that my 3rd point?
was it?
Yes, you need to read that back, the 3rd point. The 2nd one was the updated ARA site plans. And the 3rd one was that council receives, reviews, and determines complete the Hall route.
Okay.
Sorry, through you, before I had gives preliminary acceptance of Hall route agreement.
Yeah, I'd like to change that to determines complete the Hall route agreement proposal.
That lets us review what it is they've got. Okay, Jesse, you can read that back when it's done so that Councillor Armstrong knows what she said.
Open to any suggestions as
Yeah.
well for.
Councillor Francis,
Mayor, do you have a seconder on that motion?
would you like to second that
I
motion?
would like to second it.
Okay. We won't vote on it till Councillor Armstrong is happy with her,
I'm
and
done.
until Jesse gets it sorted out. Go ahead, Jesse.
Well, I have something written down. Would you like me to just?
I can try my best. I have that council received the report from Chris Jones, and further that at this time, they deem the application not complete and request the following. One being a statement from the originators of the 4 studies, being hydrogeological, environmental impact study, blasting study,
Mhm.
archaeological study, to confirm that they comply with the current provincial policy statement, reflect the changes,
Reflect the operation of both a dimensional stone and an aggregate quarry. And are still valid today, given the new residential developments on the roads.
And we still haven't heard, you're getting to the traffic.
Yep, that's just number 1.
thank you. Number 2 was to request the applicant provide an up-to-date set of ARA site plans which reflect evidence and commitments relied upon in prior OMB decisions to approve official plan amendment 41. And that council has reviewed and reviews and determines complete the Hall route agreement proposal.
Yes.
Everybody okay with that? And we've had a seconder. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, Chris, you can't go home yet. Application for the zoning amendment for Duty Mountain Farms.
You don't want to play this over, do you?
No, no, please no.
Okay, that's it.
All right, have a good day.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you for all the effort.
Yes.
Requesting a 5-minute break.
Sure. looking at 251. Finance, no reports. Administration,
Oh, sorry, through Mayor Clarkson, we missed, we were at 10.4.2. Adele Arbor with major site plan amendment for ARI permit 603441.
I'm sorry, yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Parnell Contracting is requesting an amendment to their quarry site plan agreement, which would remove a condition that currently restricts certain quarry activities during the regular fall gun hunting seasons for moose and deer. This condition was originally added in 2009 during their permit application process with the ministry, and the ministry addressed this condition and included it because it was the ministry's obligation to balance industrial and remote recreational activities. The quarry made a similar request to have this condition removed in 2010, and it was denied. It's being recommended, Mayor Clarkson, that council receive this report and that a copy be forwarded to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, and further that the ministry be advised that the municipality of Trent Lakes is not adverse to the removal of the current restrictions regarding certain quarry activities during the regular fall gun hunting seasons for moose and deer. And in this report, council will see that I've included as the commenting process all the agencies and stakeholders that were circulated for comments regarding this request as well.
Adele, does this not open the door for all of the other quarries to ask for the same exemption?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, it does. I mean, anybody can ask for any condition to be removed. However, there is a public consultation process, and I leave it up to the ministry to, make that decision based on their circulation. I haven't received any calls or comments from any of the public regarding this request. And you'll notice that all landowners within 120 meters of the permit boundary were circulated, and all Crown land users, which the ministry would have contact information for, they were contacted as well as our Indigenous communities, County of Peterborough. So I leave it up to the ministry to make a decision.
We have comments.
That one, Jen. Mayor Clarkson?
Yes.
I agree with this request. We don't stop logging operations because of the deer or moose hunt. There's lots of construction and everything else that goes on within the municipality in the rural areas, even though there's a deer hunt or moose hunt going on.
Anybody else? We've got a deer hunter over here, I think. Do you want to comment?
Can make a comment. I don't know that any of the people that actually do moose and deer hunt in there are going to be in favor of this, but that's up to the ministry to decide, I guess. I think our Indigenous people have a few places in there that they do occupy during the regular gun hunt of moose and deer. So I can't believe they haven't had a comment yet, but I'm sure they will. And that will be up for the Ministry of Natural Resources to decide, I think.
Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. My only comment was really yours is the fairness and the consistency of how these decisions are made. I would defer it to the MNRF, and I would hope that their process takes into due consideration the input from all of the stakeholders, including the Indigenous, as well as the other associations in particular that use Crown land. So I'm okay with this. I have reservations, but it sounds to me like the MNRF is the appropriate body to be making the decision.
Well, I do too, and I agree. Like, of the people that I know, like we have a camp, and the people up there who deer hunt don't oppose that right at all. And there's enough stress on the animals these days that it's not like there are hundreds of them coming out of the bushes. So I certainly wouldn't give a blanket approve this, but I would go along with the motion to leave it up to the MNR. So Dave, I think you, Councillor Lamb said, I think you made the motion? Nope. Would anybody?
I'll make the motion.
I say, because you're gonna make the motion to what? Support this or
Support that.
recommend it to the M&R?
Support that recommendation, send it off to them at M&R.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. All in favor? Carried. Now, Jesse, help me. Where are we?
We will be at 10.6.1.
Joe, this is Chastity's.
Yep.
Okay, Chastity, are you there, Deputy Treasurer? Accessibility?
Yes, I am. Hi. Yep, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, this report is for the amendment of our 2 accessibility policies. Our HR consulting firm has reviewed our current policies and has made the recommended amendments to ensure that we are compliant with accessibility standards. I am recommending that Council approve the amended accessibility customer service standard policy, and further that Council approve the amended accessibility integrated accessibility standard regulation policy.
Okay, can we have a motion, please? Sounds reasonable.
That motion is presented.
Councillor Lambshead? Councillor Armstrong,
I'll second it
seconder?
with a question, if I may.
Yep.
I saw that Sheriff did the work on this. I just want to assure myself that staff has reviewed what has been prepared by Sheriff and is in support of it. And I'm seeing nods.
That okay with you, Donna?
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Chastity?
Sorry, I was just going to say, through you, Madam Mayor, yes, I've had Donna and McClerk's department review this as well.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so all in favor? Motion is carried. Donna, CAO Treasurer, Volunteer Management Policy.
Right, thank you, and through you. Before you is a report requesting direction from council to proceed and create a volunteer management policy. This policy, the particulars in it are included in the report. So there would be an outline of the council responsibility, the corporation, municipal staff, the volunteers, along with the resources that would come with all of the items in the policy. So we did put this out as indicated in the report to the halls, the sports pad group, and the PRCAC. We have heard back from a couple of those individuals. The PRCAC would like to see open space included in this report. And there is a recommendation to look at a more fulsome volunteer management rule expectation type document for the actual volunteer. So look at training and supervision, that type of thing. So we are still investigating those items that were requested to go into this report and looking to get some feedback from the other 2 halls. So we're just looking for direction that we will come back with the policy, taking into consideration all the feedback that we've been given.
Now, has your feedback come from the individual volunteers or who's your feedback coming back from?
So through you, we sent it to all of the hall boards, the sports pad, the PRCAC, and we asked those individuals to share it with all their members. So it's from those bodies in their entirety.
Yes, Councillor.
Through you to Donna, have you talked to anybody in the goodbye room?
So through you, we have not talked to people in the goodbye room. I have had some discussions with the library. It is a little bit unique because the library is its own board.
Yep.
So they do currently train volunteers. They do have a process in place, but we are looking to streamline those employees as well. So we will include those. We do need some clarification on the roles and the insurance for those individuals too. So we are doing work on that as well.
Okay, great.
The police checks are difficult right now because you can't go up to the OPP and get them. You've got to download it, fill it out, email it back. It's a problem. Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
I would make a motion to receive the report and direct staff to prepare a volunteer management policy.
And I would like to have a comment on that. I think we've got to be very careful that we don't put restrictions on volunteers that make it too onerous for them. In some of these organizations, some of them will do a lot more work than others, depending on what their qualifications are. And I think we've got to keep in mind they are just that. They are volunteers. They are not paid. And we have to treat them with the respect that they are due. So all in favor of that motion? And that is, that's carried. And Ruth, Deputy Clerk. 2020 Statement on Remuneration and Expenses. There's no comment. Go ahead, Ann.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. Section 284(1) of the Municipal Act requires that a statement on remuneration and expenses paid in the previous year be provided to Council on or before March 31st of each year. This report brings forward the 2020 Statement on Remuneration and Expenses to Council for their information. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions on this? And if not, a motion to approve, whatever? Councillor Lamset.
I'll make a motion to receive that for information.
Okay, seconder, please. Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, Ann. Correspondence for information. Anybody want to pull any one of these out? Seeing none. Can we have a motion to accept this group?
Motion to receive the correspondence for information.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Thank you. Correspondence for action, Baker Tilly, audit planning report. And Donna, you're going to speak to this one, please.
Great. Thank you, through you. This request is to formalize the work that's undertaken annually by Baker Tilly. So it's just a confirmation through a planning report that engages their services, and in order for them to prepare the 2021 statements and any planning that's required for that. So I can tell you that the audit is mostly complete. We've done a remote audit this year, which has been unique. So there are still the odd questions coming, but yes, the audit is now complete, and council will receive the statements April the 6th.
Okay. Do we have a motion to accept this?
I guess a motion to receive and support
Yeah.
the request for our
And seconder would be Councillor Lamshead.
conversation.
And all in favor? And thank you very much for the time and effort and everything, Donna. That is definitely your initiative that gets us through this year after year with no bruises. I know you have some bruises, but
Thank you, and through you, but it's very much a team effort, but I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
well, you can pass it on to your team because
I
you
will.
know
Thank you.
they all have a piece of the action, and you just have to pull it together. Okay, City of St. Catharines Universal Paid Sick Days in Ontario. Do we have a motion to support or receive?
I'd like to make a motion,
Yes,
a motion to receive.
okay,
I don't believe mom and pop organizations could pay sick leave for employees.
I'll second that motion.
okay. And is that motion carried? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Advertising request, Courageous Canines. A motion, please. How much is this? This is $295. And this is the Courageous Companions from Canada. Do we have a motion? Yes.
Motion support.
Okay. Councillor Franzen supporting this. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lambshead. All in favor?
Question, if I may?
Yes.
I assume this is in the budget because it was in a prior year, Donna.
So through you, yes, council does have a $3,000 advertising budget that they could allocate out of for this, and so far have just supported the $375.73 for the Explore Buckhorn publication. So there is room in that budget.
Okay, Peterborough Public Health paid sick leave during an infectious disease emergency.
Sorry, through you, Mayor Clarkson, can we just have the vote for that last resolution to support the courageous canine advertising?
Yes, we can. All in favor? That is carried. Peterborough Public Health paid sick leave during an infectious disease emergency. Need a motion to, yes.
Motion to, motion to receive.
Okay, do we have another motion or seconder?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we're not supporting, we're just receiving this, okay? All in favor? And that's carried. Township of Perth South Working Group Composition for Conservation Authorities Review. Motion?
Motion to receive.
Councillor Lamshead, you're seconding it?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all in favor? That's carried. Town of Orangeville greenhouse gas emissions. Motion, please.
To receive.
Okay, Councillor Lamshead and Councillor Armstrong is the seconder. All in favor? And that is carried. Township of Archipelago requested amendments to the Municipal Elections Act. And do we have a motion, please?
Just a comment. I thought we already supported something like this. And I think this was the issue where kids were staying in mom and pop's bunkie and they were being able to vote because of it. So if we need to, I'll support it again, but I think we already did support that.
Probably is going to matter anyway. I'd say probably isn't going to matter anyway.
Yeah. So motion to support.
Okay.
Again.
Councillor Lamshead,
Okay, I'll second that.
all in favor?
Yep.
That is carried. Township of Conwy, isn't it amazing how many of these we've never heard of? Criminal records and municipal election candidates. Get a motion. That should be a motion to support.
Motion to receive.
To receive?
Oh,
You don't think that's a
I was gonna
necessary thing?
support it.
Pardon?
I was going to support it. We expect our volunteers to get a police check, and members of the council attend those meetings as well. And we don't need a police check.
And I think it's a complicated issue. Do you rule out people who've had a conviction for something like, one thing of marijuana? I think it's a complex issue. I'm just not so sure.
Okay. I'll second the motion.
I won't. I think it's necessary. I would not second that motion. But you two are.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, I want a recorded vote on this.
Okay.
Okay. So can we have the motion? So the motion is on the floor is to
Receive.
receive.
Okay, for a recorded vote, I will start with the member who requested the vote and continue alphabetically by surname. Mayor Clarkson, are you in favor?
No.
Councillor Franzen?
Support, yes.
Councillor Lamshead?
Yes.
Councillor Armstrong?
Yes.
Okay. So what that means is this police check is not required, right? That's what we voted on?
Well, we're voting to receive this report, period. Not for, against, or otherwise, just receive it.
All in favor? And that has carried. County of Peterborough Municipal Modernization Funding. Donna, you're going to speak to this one.
Right, so through you, the county is looking for support from the municipality to apply for funding under the Municipal Modernization Program under the review stream to look at collaborating on some software for planning and development and potentially work orders and customer relations software. So they're just looking for us to, actually I have a recommendation in it, that council receive the correspondence from the County of Peterborough regarding municipal modernization funding, and further that council authorize staff to partner with the County of Peterborough on their funding application under the Provincial Municipal Modernization Review Stream for the review of development planning software and work order customer relations management software with a goal to collaborate and standardize solutions.
Donna, is this not the cloud?
So through you, it is, and partly it's mesh, I believe, as well as but it's an investigation at this stage. But the cloud, they are aware that we do have the cloud permit system here, but there is another portal for that for actual development that they're going to investigate.
Okay, so it's part of the same thing.
It could very well partner in with what we already have here.
So what is your recommendation?
I'm recommending that you support it based on that link fee.
Okay. All right. Yes,
I'll make
Councillor
that a
Limestad.
motion as recommended.
Okay, and do we have a seconder? I'm looking. Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Carried. Bylaws on the agenda memorandum. Jesse. And you're just going to speak to these? We don't have motions that we need to these?
Through you, the bylaws on the agenda memo does not require a motion, but each bylaw will need to be approved. So there were several bylaws on the agenda that didn't have a report or a public meeting. The first is 2021-31, which is the bylaw to repeal and replace the zoning bylaw to make an administrative correction in the exception zones. 32 is a bylaw to appoint Bianca Dragicevic as a deputy clerk for her one-year contract as a records coordinator. Bylaw 2021-33 is a bylaw to appoint Suzanne Lane as deputy treasurer for the duration of her contract. B 2021-34 and 35 both relate to the execution of merger agreements for severance files 59 and 5818A for Stefan, which is a requirement of their severance approval. And B 2021-36 is a zoning bylaw amendment for file 2033 Pearson. Councillor Lambshead very nicely pointed out that the municipality is now in receipt, not in receipt of reference plan 45R17079, which was a requirement for the zoning bylaw amendment approval.
Thank you. And we don't have any motions necessary there. We have a zoning amendment for file number 1921 for Renee to repeal and replace. This one we do need a motion for.
Motion to approve.
Councillor Lambshead motions to approve. Councillor Armstrong as the seconding this. Could we have the vote, please? All in favor? And that is carried. Now we need to appoint Bianca. Aha. Bianca, deputy clerk. Somebody say that name for me. Dragovici?
Dragicevic.
Say that again fast.
Dragicevic.
Rasikovic. Close. Close. Okay. And we're glad to have her in that position. We have a motion, please.
Motion to appoint.
Do you want to say it?
No, I don't.
Okay, Councillor Feinson and Councillor Lambshead, and all in favor? Welcome, Bianca. Appoint Suzanne Lean, Deputy Treasurer. And nice to have you back, Suzanne. Councillor Armstrong is the mover. Councillor Lambshead is our seconder. All in favor? Carried. Nice to see your smiling face there. Merger agreement for consent file B5918A for Stefan. Motion, please.
Motion to approve. I feel like we've had this about 8 times on our agenda.
Yeah, and there's no last name we have to struggle with. That's probably it. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Carried. Where's Ron when you need him? Merger agreement for consent file B18. Oh, here we go again. 5818A for Stefan. Another motion, please. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Franzen, all in favor, and that is carried. B 2021-036 zoning bylaw amendment file for 2033 for Pearson. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor, carried. Do we have any business arising out of a previous meeting? Yes.
Just one minor point. The manager from the BCC, she mentioned that they do rock on the locks, and she wanted to make assure that there would be still room for the gazebo and the benches that they put up there. That when they do the playground and the other work, that they would consult with her, or she would consult with them about the locations, so they can maintain the same location that they had in previous years.
That's probably a reasonable request. I think something that's going to be there permanently can't totally be influenced by a once a year event, but to have her as part of a consultation process, I think
Yeah.
that's we're not there yet to figure out where they are going to be positioned, but wherever they're positioned, they will take the same footprint. So Rock the Locks will have the remainder of that space to do their thing.
Okay.
Notice of motion. Anything coming up there? Liaison reports from external boards. Anybody have attended a meeting that they would like to speak to? Terry, did you glean any?
Earlier on the,
Pardon?
we kind of did that earlier on the
Yeah.
agenda, really.
Well, this one here is to do, if you wanted to speak to OGRA. I don't know whether
Yeah,
you gleaned anything
just
out of that,
I could make a little short.
just anything that
It was
stuck out that could be of interest to us.
I can tell you that we're all in the same boat. I think it was unanimous in every presentation that I watched, everything we went through, is that we are all in the same boat. We need some help from the federal and provincial governments to come out the other end of COVID-19 pandemic in a reasonable manner.
Donna, can you speak to the one that you listened in on the last and several liability? Was there anything there or just chatter?
Through you, no, that was a very interesting presentation. Obviously, council know it's an issue. AMO put out a survey. I did respond to that and answer. They're looking for solutions, but the training that I did was really a way to make sure we lessen risk as much as possible. Look at our roads, look at signage. It's a huge element. Look at our building department and their inspections and making sure if permits are out there a long time, that staff should be going there and inspecting and making sure there isn't building happening. But the bottom line is it comes down to if 1% liability is levied against the municipality, they could be paying the whole amount the way it's sitting right now. So AMO are investigating different alternatives for, maybe pooling in for insurance, that type of thing. But yes, it's very much in the forefront.
So the pooling, what they're speaking of there is what we've been asking for the self-insurance,
Yeah.
where you pool a whole
Yes.
bunch of us together and cover our, but you didn't get any warm and fuzzy about them actually changing the legislation to reverse the last and final.
Through you, just that it is definitely a push through the Attorney General, but it isn't going to change right now. It's still being discussed, but.
Did you get an idea that they have any kind of a concept as just how problematic this is?
It's very problematic. Yes, it's an issue for many. The insurance premiums have very much increased for a lot of municipalities, and there's a very limited number of insurers that will even consider us. So it's definitely an issue. It's been acknowledged as an issue, but also the rights of individuals that have been in accidents. They look at those rights strongly as well. So it's, yeah.
Well, I guess all we can do is just keep joining the ranks with everybody else and keep it percolating. Now, in any of your calls, Terry, were any of those discussions part of that as well?
No,
Or
no, the joint and several liability, no.
all right. Any other information items? I'm sorry.
Just for information, maybe we should spell it. That was Ontario Good Roads,
Pardon?
the conference.
Yeah, sure.
Just so
Yeah.
for people that are listening online.
Very good. Thank you for that correction.
Okay. Which used to be just good roads where parties went. Some of us remember that. Any other information items that people have either been involved in or? Okay, now we need a motion to go into closed. And council is going into closed meeting to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, litigation or potential litigation, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Anyone that is listening or viewing the electronic meeting may remain on the line for when council rises from closed session. We need a motion to go into close, please. Councillor Franson, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor. That motion is carried. Okay. We need a motion to rise from closed. And that would be Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? That would be carried. Business arising from a closed meeting, adoption of the minutes from the regular closed session of February the 16th and the special closed session also of February the 16th. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor, carried. For all the motions coming out of the closed meeting, get motion. Yes,
There's just the one coming out to appoint Sheila Perry to the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee for the remainder of the 2018-2022 term.
thank you. And welcome to the group. Councillor,
Motion to approve.
okay, Councillor Franzen and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor, carried. Adoption of confirming bylaw, get motion to approve. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Franzen, all in favor, carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Armstrong, would you like to make that motion?
I would.
Councillor Lambshead, would you like to make that motion?
Second.
Donna, would you like to concur? All in favor? Well done, folks. A long meeting.
Adjourn.